Captain Matt Sullivan watched through his main screen as the last group of Vorthak ships jumped to faster-than-light speed, fleeing the Nithera system in complete disorder. His destroyer, the Resolute, had taken heavy damage during the battle, but her engines were still good enough to pursue the retreating enemy. All around him, the debris field that had once been the most powerful invasion fleet in Vorthak history floated silently in space. "Captain, should we follow them?" his tactical officer asked, watching the enemy ships disappear into the darkness between the stars. Matt considered the option for a moment. Part of him wanted to chase down every single Vorthak ship and make sure they could never threaten innocent people again, but his crew was exhausted, his ship was barely holding together, and there were more important things to worry about right now. Negative, he decided. Let them run back to their masters and tell them what happens when they attack defenseless civilians. We have rescue operations to coordinate. Throughout the battle zone, human ships were already beginning the difficult work of searching for survivors. The space around Nithera was filled with wreckage from both fleets, and there were thousands of escape pods, damaged ships, and injured people who needed immediate help. Lieutenant Dana Foster was leading one of the search and rescue teams aboard the medical ship Mercy. Her crew had been trained specifically for this kind of operation, and they worked with calm efficiency, despite the chaos around them. Their sensors could detect life signs through several feet of metal, and their rescue shuttles were equipped with cutting tools that could get through almost any kind of debris. "We have multiple contacts in Section 7, her sensor operator reported. "Looks like a cluster of Zalarian escape pods that got caught in the explosion from that enemy cruiser." "Take us in," Dana ordered. "Medical team, prepare for multiple casualties." The Mercy's shuttle bay was already filled with survivors from both human and Zalarian ships. Dana had been amazed to discover that the two species were physiologically compatible enough that human medical equipment could treat Zalarian injuries. Their crystalline bodies were different from human flesh, but they breathed the same kind of atmosphere and had similar requirements for emergency medical care. Dr. Patricia Williams, the ship's chief medical officer, was working frantically to save as many lives as possible. She had never treated alien patients before, but she was discovering that courage and determination looked the same in any species. "How is the Zalarian pilot doing?" Dana asked as she stopped by the medical bay. "He will live," Dr. Williams replied, checking her patient's vital signs. "His name is Captain Zell, and he kept asking about his crew. I told him that we rescued 15 of his people from his ship's wreckage." "That is good news," Dana said with relief. Every life they could save made the terrible cost of the battle seem a little more worthwhile. On the surface of Nithera, Dr. Lyra was coordinating the emergence of her people from the underground shelters. The planet's surface was scarred with craters from the orbital bombardment, and several of their beautiful crystal cities had been completely destroyed. But the most important thing was that most of the population had survived, and their cultural heritage was safe in the deep archives. "Professor Lyra, we have established contact with the human fleet," her assistant Zara reported. "They are offering to help with the surface cleanup and medical assistance for anyone who was injured during the bombardment." Lyra felt a surge of gratitude toward these strange aliens, who had risked everything to save her world. "Tell them that we accept their offer with deep appreciation, and ask if we can speak directly with their commander. There are things we need to discuss." An hour later, Lyra found herself in a video conference with Admiral Ben Carter aboard the human flagship Liberty. The Admiral was a middle-aged man with gray hair and tired eyes, but his voice was warm and respectful as he spoke. "Dr. Lyra, I want you to know that my entire fleet is honored to have been able to help your people," he said. "What your Admiral Crix and his fleet accomplished today was nothing short of heroic. They held the line against impossible odds until we could arrive." "Admiral Carter, it is we who are grateful," Lyra replied. "Your people sacrificed their lives for a world they had never seen before. That level of courage and generosity is something we will never forget." Carter nodded solemnly. "We lost some good people today, but their sacrifice prevented a genocide. In my culture, there is no higher honor than giving your life to protect the innocent." As they spoke, human and Zalarian rescue teams were working together throughout the system to save as many survivors as possible. The cooperation between the two species was remarkable, considering that they had only met each other a few hours ago. Language barriers were overcome through translation devices. Cultural differences were set aside in the face of shared danger, And gradually, a real friendship was beginning to develop. Admiral Crix was experiencing this personally as he worked alongside Captain Jake Morrison to coordinate the cleanup operations. The human officer had lost his own ship during the final assault on the Vorthak flagship, but he had survived in an escape pod and immediately volunteered to help with rescue work. "Admiral, your people fought with incredible skill and courage today," Morrison said as they reviewed the casualty reports together. "I have never seen anyone hold the line the way your fleet did." "Captain, without your arrival, we would all be dead right now," Crix replied honestly. "Your species fights like nothing I have ever encountered." The Vorthak had never been defeated before today. Morrison smiled grimly. They picked the wrong fight when they decided to start burning civilian populations. "My people have a saying, you can push humans around for a while, but eventually we push back. And when we do not stop until the job is finished." "I am beginning to understand that about your species," Crix said, with something that might have been amusement. "Tell me, Captain, are all human military operations this aggressive?" "Actually, this was pretty restrained for us," Morrison admitted. "We were trying to make a good impression on our new neighbors." The cleanup and rescue operations continued for 3 more days. Human ships worked around the clock to clear debris from shipping lanes, while Zalarian engineers began the long process of rebuilding their damaged cities. Gradually, a sense of normalcy began to return to the Nethera system. But everyone involved knew that this battle had been just the beginning of something much larger. The Vorthak Empire was vast, with thousands of ships and hundreds of conquered worlds. They would not simply accept this defeat and leave the galaxy in peace. Admiral Brooks was already making plans for the next phase of operations from his command ship, the Defiance. His tactical staff had been studying the captured Vorthak computers that Major Park's boarding teams had recovered, and the intelligence they contained was both valuable and disturbing. "Admiral, we now have detailed information about Vorthak fleet movements throughout this entire sector," his intelligence officer reported. "They have staging areas in 12 different star systems with supply depots and shipyards that support their conquest operations." "What about their home territory?" Brooks asked. "According to these files, their main fleet base is located in a system called Vorthak Prime, approximately 40 light-years from here. It is heavily fortified and defended by their most powerful ships." Brooks studied the star charts that showed the full extent of Vorthak territory. It was enormous, covering hundreds of star systems and billions of people who had been enslaved or killed during the Empire's expansion. Liberating all of those worlds would require a massive effort that could take years to complete. "Sir, there is something else," the intelligence officer continued. "These records indicate that the Vorthak have been tracking human expansion for the past several months. They consider our species to be a significant threat to their operations." "Good," Brooks replied with satisfaction. "That means they are finally starting to understand what they are dealing with." As the rescue operations wound down, both human and Zalarian leaders began to discuss the future. It was clear that the two species would need to work together if they wanted to prevent future Vorthak attacks. The enemy would return, probably with even larger fleets and more advanced weapons. Dr. Lyra met with Ambassador Ashley Morgan, the senior human diplomatic representative, to begin formal discussions about an alliance between their peoples. The two women found that despite their different backgrounds, they shared many of the same values about protecting innocent life and preserving cultural diversity. "Ambassador Morgan, our people have been fighting this war alone for 3 years, Lyra explained. "We have the knowledge of Vorthak tactics and technology, but we lack the military strength to drive them back to their own territory. Dr. Lyra, humanity has been fighting the Vorthak in other parts of the galaxy for 2 years, Ashley replied. "We have the ships and the fighting spirit, but we need allies who understand the local political situation and can provide intelligence about enemy operations." "Then it seems that our peoples can help each other," Lyra said with a smile that translated perfectly despite the differences in their facial structure. "I think this could be the beginning of a very productive partnership," Ashley agreed. As the human and Zalarian fleets prepared to depart Nethera for their respective home, 6 weeks after the Battle of Nethera, Ambassador Ashley Morgan stood in the Grand Council chamber of the Zalarian capital world, looking out at representatives from dozens of star systems who had come to witness the signing of the most important treaty in galactic history. The chamber itself was a masterpiece of crystal architecture, with walls that seemed to glow with their own internal light and ceiling that showed a perfect view of the stars above. "Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings from across the galaxy," Ashley began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems. "We are here today to formalize an alliance that was born in the fire of battle and tempered by the blood of heroes. The Human-Zalarian Defense Pact represents more than just a military agreement between two species. It represents hope for all free peoples who refuse to bow down to tyranny." In the audience, Dr. Lyra sat with Admiral Crix and other survivors from the Battle of Nethera. All of them bore the scars of that terrible day, but they also carried with them the knowledge that their sacrifice had not been in vain. The Vorthak invasion had been stopped, and now they had allies who would help them fight back. General Alex Turner, the senior human military representative, stepped forward to address the assembly. His uniform bore the ribbons and medals of someone who had spent most of his adult life fighting humanity's enemies, but his expression was hopeful rather than grim. "The Vorthak Empire has terrorized this galaxy for over a century," he said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had seen combat on a dozen different worlds. "They have destroyed entire civilizations, enslaved billions of innocent people, and spread fear throughout known space. But they made one critical mistake. They underestimated the power of free beings working together toward a common goal." The audience murmured its agreement. Many of the representatives present had lost friends, family members, or entire worlds to Vorthak aggression. They knew firsthand what the enemy was capable of, and they were eager to support any effort that might finally bring the Empire to justice. Captain Jake Morrison, who had been promoted to Commodore after the battle, presented the intelligence that human boarding parties had captured from Vorthak ships. The information was displayed on a massive holographic projection that showed the full extent of the enemy's territory and military capabilities. "According to these captured files," Morrison explained, "the Vorthak maintain major fleet bases in 18 different star systems. They have over 12,000 active warships, plus construction facilities that can build new vessels at a rate of approximately 200 per year. Their total military personnel numbers in the millions." The numbers were sobering, but Morrison was not finished. "However, we have also learned important information about their weaknesses. The Vorthak military doctrine is based on overwhelming their enemies through superior numbers and firepower. They have never developed effective tactics for dealing with boarding parties, suicide attacks, or other forms of unconventional warfare. Their command structure is rigid and breaks down quickly when their leadership is eliminated." Ambassador Morgan nodded as Morrison finished his presentation. "In other words, they are very good at fighting civilized opponents who follow established rules of warfare. They are much less effective against enemies who are willing to fight dirty. And humans are very good at fighting dirty," General Turner added with a slight smile. "That is one of our most useful cultural traits." The formal signing ceremony took place an hour later, with representatives from both species adding their names to a document that committed them to mutual defense and shared military operations. But the real work had already been going on for weeks in smaller meetings between military planners, intelligence officers, and logistics specialists. Captain Amy Rodriguez had been working with Zalarian Admiral Vex to develop new tactical doctrines that combined human aggression with Zalarian technical sophistication. Their joint planning sessions had produced strategies that neither species could have developed on their own. "The key is to use our different strengths to complement each other," Rodriguez explained to a group of mixed human and Zalarian officers. "Human ships are built for close-quarters combat and can survive more damage than Zalarian vessels. But Zalarian ships have superior sensors and can coordinate attacks more precisely than ours. So we use Zalarian ships to identify enemy weak points and coordinate the overall battle plan," Admiral Vex continued, "while human ships conduct the actual attacks and boarding operations. The combination should be much more effective than either of us could achieve fighting alone." Similar cooperation was developing in other areas as well. Human engineers were learning how to adapt their weapons and defense systems for use on Zalarian ships, while Zalarian scientists were sharing their advanced sensor technology with human research teams. The cultural exchange was proceeding just as rapidly, with language specialists from both species working to develop better translation systems and diplomatic protocols. Dr. Patricia Williams had been particularly impressed by Zalarian medical techniques. which used crystalline technology to heal injuries that would be permanent in human patients. Their understanding of cellular regeneration is centuries ahead of ours, she reported to her superiors. If we can combine their healing technology with our surgical techniques, we could revolutionize military medicine. But the most important development was taking place in the shipyards orbiting both human and Zalarian worlds, where engineers from both species were working together to design new classes of warships specifically intended for fighting the Vorthak. These vessels would incorporate the best features of both technologies, human durability, and firepower with Zalarian precision and coordination. Systems. Admiral Brooks reviewed the preliminary designs from his office aboard the Defiance, which was currently docked at a Zalarian shipyard for repairs and upgrades. The new ships looked promising, but he knew that building them would take time that they might not have. How long before we can have the first prototype ready for testing? He asked Commander Lisa Park, who had been promoted to oversee the joint shipbuilding program. At least 8 months, sir, she replied. The integration of human and Zalarian systems is more complex than we initially anticipated, but the preliminary test results suggest that these hybrid designs will be significantly more effective than anything either of us has built before. Good, Brooks said with satisfaction, because according to our intelligence reports, the Vorthak are already building new ships to replace the ones we destroyed at Nuthera. They are not going to give us the luxury of preparing at our own pace. Indeed, intercepted communications suggested that the Vorthak Empire was preparing for a massive counterattack that would dwarf their previous invasion attempts. The defeat at Nuthera had shocked their leadership and convinced them that the human-Zalarian alliance represented an existential threat to their continued expansion. Sir, we have received confirmation that Vorthak scout ships have been detected in the outer systems of both human and Zalarian space, Brooks's intelligence officer reported during their daily briefing. They appear to be mapping our defenses and identifying targets for future attacks. Then we need to move faster than originally planned, Brooks decided. Signal Admiral Carter and Admiral Crix. I want to meet with both of them to discuss accelerating our offensive operations. The meeting took place 2 days later in a secure conference room aboard the Liberty, which was serving as temporary headquarters for joint operations. The 3 senior commanders represented the best military minds that either species had to offer, and they were united in their determination to take the fight directly to the enemy. Gentlemen, we have a choice to make, Brooks began without preamble. We can wait here and let the Vorthak build up their forces for another invasion attempt, or we can strike first and catch them while they are still recovering from their losses. I prefer the aggressive approach, Admiral Carter said immediately. My crews are ready for action, and our intelligence suggests that several Vorthak staging areas are currently undermanned and vulnerable. Admiral Crix was more cautious, as befitted someone who had spent 3 years fighting a defensive war. Admiral Brooks, our combined fleets are still significantly outnumbered by Vorthak forces. An offensive operation would be extremely risky. All military operations are risky, Brooks replied. The question is whether we take risks on our own terms or let the enemy dictate the time and place of battle. I would rather fight them in their territory than wait for them to attack our civilian populations again. After several hours of discussion, the 3 commanders reached agreement on a preliminary offensive plan that would target the weakest Vorthak positions first, gradually building momentum for larger operations against more heavily defended systems. It was an ambitious strategy that would require careful coordination between human and Zalarian forces, but all 3 officers believed it offered the best chance of ultimate success. As the meeting ended, Admiral Crix reflected on how much had changed since that desperate day, when his fleet had been on the verge of destruction. 6 weeks ago, the Zalarians had been fighting alone against an enemy that seemed. Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the control room of Luna Command Station, looking out at the stars through the big window. He had been in charge of Earth's space defense for 10 years. His coffee cup sat empty on the metal table beside him. The morning had been quiet until now. Admiral Morrison, we have something big coming in, said Communications Officer Lisa Rodriguez from her station. She looked worried as she stared at her screens. I mean really big, sir. Jake walked over to her desk quickly. Lisa was one of his best people. If she looked worried, then something was very wrong. What do you see, Lisa? 12 massive objects just appeared near Jupiter. They came out of nowhere about 5 minutes ago. Our long-range scanners are picking up metal signatures that are huge. Each one looks like it's over 3 kilometers long. Jake felt his stomach drop. 3 kilometers long was bigger than any ship humans had ever built. The largest human ship was only 800 meters long. Are you sure about those readings? Yes, sir. Captain Amy Walsh on the patrol ship Nevada is moving closer to get better pictures. She should have visual contact in about 20 minutes. Jake pressed a button on the wall. All senior staff to the command center immediately. This is not a drill. He looked back at Lisa. Keep monitoring those signals. I want to know everything about these ships. Lisa nodded and put her headphones back on. She worked quickly, typing commands into her computer. Sir, I'm picking up some kind of transmission. It's not like anything we use. The signal pattern is completely different. Can you understand it? Not yet, but the computer is working on it. Wait. Lisa's eyes got wide. Sir, the computer just broke through. It's a message and it's in English. Jake moved closer. Put it on the main speakers. A deep, strange voice filled the room. It sounded like it came from something that was not human. Attention, primitive inhabitants of the third planet. I am War Commander Zelthak of the hegemony of Keth. Your species will surrender immediately and join our empire. You have one rotation of your planet to decide. Resistance will result in complete destruction. The room became very quiet. Everyone stopped what they were doing and looked at Admiral Morrison. Jake had trained for many situations, but he had never really believed that aliens would show up at Earth's door demanding surrender. Sir, said Lieutenant Dan Cooper from the radar station, Captain Walsh is sending in her report now. The big screen at the front of the room lit up with images from the Nevada. Jake saw 12 ships that looked like floating cities. They were dark gray and covered with weapons. Each ship had rows of gun ports along their sides. Strange lights moved across their surfaces. They looked like nothing humans had ever built. Captain Amy Walsh's voice came through the speakers. Luna Command, this is Nevada. I can confirm 12 alien vessels holding position near Jupiter. They appear to be warships of unknown design. Each ship is approximately 3.2 kilometers in length. I can see what look like weapon systems covering their hulls. They are not moving toward us at this time, but they are scanning our ship with some kind of energy beam. Roger that, Nevada. Continue to observe, but do not approach closer than 50,000 kilometers. Jake turned to his staff. I want every ship we have ready for action within the hour. Contact Mars Base and tell them to prepare their defenses. Get me President Carter on the secure line right now. Lisa raised her hand. Sir, the aliens are sending another message. Put it through. War Commander Zelthak's voice filled the room again. We know you can hear us, humans. We have studied your primitive technology. Your small ships and basic weapons cannot harm us. We have conquered 17 other species across this galaxy. You will be the 18th. Submit now and your deaths will be quick. The message ended, leaving silence in the command room. Jake looked around at his people. They all looked scared, but they were still working. That was good. Fear could be useful if people stayed focused. Sir, said Colonel Mary Patterson, who had just arrived from the deep bunker levels below Luna Command. All Ghost Fleet units are reporting ready status. They remain undetected. Jake nodded slightly. Mary was one of only 5 people who knew about the Ghost Fleet. It was humanity's biggest secret. For 15 years, Earth had been building a hidden navy in secret locations throughout the solar system. The ships were invisible to most scanners and much more advanced than anything the public knew about. Keep them hidden for now. We need to see what these aliens can do first. Captain Walsh's voice came through again. Luna Command, the alien ships are moving. They're heading toward the inner solar system. Speed appears to be increasing. They should reach Mars orbit in about 6 hours at their current rate. Understood, Nevada. Fall back to Mars and wait for orders. Jake walked to the communication console. Lisa, open a channel to all Earth Defense Forces. Use the old radio system, not the new quantum communications. Sir? The old radios are much slower and easier to intercept. That's exactly what I want. Make sure the aliens can hear everything we say. Lisa looked confused but followed orders. She switched to the old radio system that humans had been using for over a century. Channel open, sir. Jake spoke clearly into the microphone. All Earth Defense Force ships, this is Admiral Morrison. We have 12 large alien vessels approaching Mars. All available ships are ordered to form a defensive line at Mars orbit. We will show these aliens that humanity will not surrender without a fight. Around the room, his staff looked surprised. They knew that the 30 ships of the regular Earth Defense Force were old and not very powerful compared to what was coming. But Jake had a plan that only a few people knew about. After Jake finished his message, he turned to Mary. "How long until the Ghost Fleet is in position?" "All units can be ready in 4 hours, sir. They're moving into attack positions now through the hidden routes." Jake smiled slightly. The aliens thought they were dealing with a primitive species that only had old ships and basic weapons. They were about to learn that humans were very good at hiding their true strength. The next few hours would decide whether Earth remained free or became part of an alien empire. "Lisa, keep monitoring their communications. I want to know everything they say to each other." "Yes, sir." "Admiral, what if they really can destroy us?" Jake looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, 12 alien warships were heading toward Earth, confident that humans would be easy to conquer. Then we'll make sure they pay a heavy price for it. But I don't think it will come to that. The room fell quiet again as everyone went back to their work. Outside the window, the stars looked the same as they always had. But Jake knew that in a few hours, everything would change forever. War Commander Zeltak stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest. The massive ship moved through space toward the inner planets of this solar system. Around him, his crew worked at their stations, preparing weapons and scanning the area for any signs of resistance. "Battlemaster Krex, what do you see from these humans?" Zeltak asked his second-in-command. Krex looked at his displays and made a sound that was like laughing, but deeper. "They have 30 small ships moving toward Mars, Commander. Each ship is less than 300 meters long. Their weapons appear to be simple chemical explosives and basic energy beams. Their technology level is at least 200 years behind our own." Zeltak nodded with satisfaction. This was exactly what he had expected. Every species the hegemony had conquered started the same way. They would gather their little ships and make brave speeches about defending their homeworld. Then they would realize how hopeless their situation was and surrender. The smart ones surrendered quickly. The stupid ones made the hegemony destroy them first. "Show me their communications," Zeltak ordered. The main screen filled with images of human ships. They were ugly compared to hegemony vessels. The human ships looked like metal boxes with engines attached. They moved slowly and seemed to have trouble staying in formation. Zeltak could hear their radio messages. "Mars Defense Group, this is Captain Ben Tucker aboard the Colorado. All ships report ready for action. We'll show these aliens that Earth doesn't give up without a fight." Another human voice answered. "Roger that, Colorado. This is Captain Lisa Evans on the Montana. Weapons are armed and ready for Earth." Zeltak turned away from the screen. "Pathetic. They actually think their primitive weapons can hurt us." He walked to the weapons control station. "Target those asteroid mining stations we passed. Destroy them completely. Let the humans see what our plasma cannons can do." The weapons officer, a tall creature with gray skin and 4 arms, worked quickly at his controls. "Targets acquired, Commander. All asteroid stations are locked. Fire." Bright blue beams shot out from the Eternal Conquest and 11 other hegemony ships. The beams traveled across space in seconds and hit the mining stations. The stations exploded in massive balls of fire and light. The explosions were so bright that they could be seen from Mars over 2 million kilometers away. On Mars base, Dr. Kevin Park watched the explosions through his telescope. He was Earth's best expert on alien life, even though he had never actually seen any aliens before today. Now he was watching them destroy human settlements with weapons that seemed impossible. "Admiral Morrison, this is Mars base," Kevin said into his radio. "The aliens just destroyed all 7 mining stations in the belt. The explosions were huge. I estimate each blast was equal to several nuclear weapons." Admiral Morrison's voice came back immediately. "Understood, Mars base. Continue to observe and report." Kevin adjusted his telescope to look at the alien ships more closely. They were still moving toward Mars, but not in any hurry. They seemed confident that they had all the time in the world. "Admiral, the alien ships are not just powerful. They're showing off. They want us to see what they can do." Back on the hegemony flagship, Zeltak was pleased with the results. "Open a channel to the human homeworld. Let them see what happens to those who resist the hegemony." The communication officer activated the transmission system. Images appeared in space above Earth, Mars, and Luna Command Station. They were three-dimensional pictures that seemed to float in the air. Humans everywhere stopped what they were doing to watch. The images showed 17 different planets. Each planet had different types of creatures living on it. Some looked like giant insects. Others were covered in fur or had multiple arms and legs. Some lived in water and looked like intelligent fish. "These are the species we have conquered," Zelthak's voice echoed across the solar system. "The Vrathan thought their crystal cities would protect them. We turned their cities to dust in 3 days. The Dulmari believed their ocean worlds made them safe. We boiled their seas until they surrendered. The Kef had weapons almost as advanced as ours. Their planet is now a dead rock floating in space." The images changed to show battles. Huge hegemony ships destroyed cities and fleets. Millions of beings ran in panic as plasma beams rained down from the sky. Some species fought bravely, but all of them lost in the end. On Luna Command Station, Admiral Morrison watched the images with his staff. Everyone in the room was quiet. The alien weapons were clearly much more powerful than anything in the regular Earth fleet. But Jake wasn't worried. He pressed a button that sent a coded message to hidden bases throughout the solar system. "This is Shepard. The wolves are gathering. Maintain stealth protocol until my direct order." Colonel Mary Patterson received the message in the deep command center below Luna Station. She passed it on to commanders at secret bases on Pluto, Europa, and hidden stations in the asteroid belt. The Ghost Fleet was moving into position, but the aliens couldn't see them. The alien broadcast continued. "Your species has built interesting machines, humans. We have studied your space stations and ships. You have learned to travel between your planets and mine, your asteroids. This shows intelligence, but you are still children playing with dangerous toys." Captain Amy Walsh listened to the broadcast from her ship, the Nevada. She was now hiding behind Mars along with the other 30 ships of the Earth Defense Force. Her crew looked frightened, which was exactly what Admiral Morrison wanted. The aliens needed to believe that humans were scared and weak. "Captain," said her communications officer, "should we respond to their message?" Amy shook her head. "No, let them think we're too scared to answer. Admiral Morrison knows what he's doing." War Commander Zelthak finished his broadcast with a final threat. "You have 18 of your hours to surrender completely. All weapons must be turned over to us. All ships must be surrendered. Your leaders must come to our ships and kneel before the hegemony. If you refuse, we will do to your planets what we did to the Kef homeworld." The broadcast ended, leaving the solar system in silence. On Earth, billions of people looked up at the sky in fear. Most of them didn't know about the Ghost Fleet. They only knew about the 30 old ships hiding behind Mars, and those ships didn't look like they could stop 12 alien dreadnoughts. But in secret bases throughout the solar system, a different kind of preparation was taking place. Ships that had been hidden for 15 years were powering up their systems. Weapons that no alien had ever seen were being loaded and targeted. Captains who had trained their entire careers for this moment were receiving their final orders. Admiral Morrison stood at the window of Luna Command Station and smiled slightly. The aliens thought they had scared humanity into submission. They thought the old ships behind Mars were everything Earth had to offer. In 17 hours, war. Commander Zelthak would learn that humans were very good at keeping secrets. The first part of Jake's plan was working perfectly. Now came the hard part, making the aliens believe they had already won, right up until the moment Earth's real fleet revealed itself. Captain Ben Tucker sat in the command chair of the USS Colorado, one of Earth's oldest warships. The ship was 40 years old and looked it. The walls needed paint, some of the controls made strange noises, and the engines had been repaired so many times that they held together mostly through hope and engineering skill. Ben looked around at his crew and felt proud of them. Every person on his ship knew they might die today, but they were still doing their jobs. They also knew something that the aliens didn't. They were part of the biggest lie in human history. "Captain Tucker, this is Admiral Morrison on Luna Command. Are you ready to begin the performance?" Ben smiled and picked up his radio microphone. He made sure he was using the old radio system that the aliens could easily intercept. "Yes, sir, Admiral. All ships are in position. We'll make this look good. Remember, Captain, you're supposed to be scared but brave. Make them think we're doing our best with primitive technology. Understood, sir. Tucker out. Ben switched to the fleet communication channel. Around Mars, 30 Earth Defense Force ships waited for his orders. Every ship was at least 20 years old. Most of them had been scheduled for retirement before this crisis began. But they were perfect for what Admiral Morrison needed them to do. All ships, this is Colorado Actual. Remember your roles, people. We're primitive humans with old ships and basic weapons. We're scared, but we won't give up. Make every transmission sound desperate but determined. Captain Lisa Evans on the Montana responded first. Roger that, Colorado. My crew is ready to play their parts. Captain Joe Martinez on the destroyer Memphis added. We'll make them think we're using our best equipment. Ben activated the ship's external cameras and looked at the alien fleet. The 12 hegemony ships had moved closer to Mars and stopped about 1 million kilometers away. Even at that distance, they looked enormous. Their weapons were pointed at the human ships and strange lights moved across their hulls. All ships, begin evasive maneuvers. Make it look like we're trying to avoid their targeting systems but don't really know how. The 30 human ships began to move in patterns that looked clumsy but determined. Some ships moved too close to each other and had to change course quickly. Others seemed to have trouble keeping up with the formation. To anyone watching, it looked like inexperienced crews doing their best with old equipment. On the hegemony flagship, War Commander Zelthak watched the human ships with amusement. Look at them, Krex. They're trying so hard to look dangerous with their little ships. Battlemaster Krex studied the human formations on his tactical display. Their movement patterns are inefficient, Commander. They're wasting energy and leaving themselves open to attack. Their weapons are primitive projectile systems and low-powered energy beams. Each of our ships could destroy all 30 of their vessels without taking damage. How long would it take us to defeat their entire fleet? Less than 10 minutes, Commander. Perhaps 5 if we use full power. Zeltic made the sound that passed for laughter among his species. Perfect. Let them think they have a chance. When they realize how hopeless their situation is, they'll surrender more quickly. What Zelthak didn't know was that deep beneath Earth's surface, in a command center that had been carved out of solid rock, Admiral Morrison was watching everything. The room was called Cheyenne Deep Command, and it was connected to every secret military installation in the solar system. Colonel Patterson, status report on Ghost Fleet positioning. Mary Patterson looked at her displays, which showed the real positions of Earth's hidden ships. Admiral, all Ghost Fleet units are in final positions. The Phantom Division is holding at coordinates Alpha 7, completely invisible to enemy sensors. The Strike Division has moved into attack formation at coordinates Beta 4. The Nemesis Carrier Group is positioned at coordinates Gamma 1, with all fighter squadrons ready for launch. Excellent. What about the Quantum Communication Network? All Ghost Fleet ships are connected through quantum entanglement communicators. The aliens cannot intercept or jam our real communications. They can only hear what we want them to hear through the old radio system. Admiral Morrison nodded with satisfaction. For 15 years, Earth's best scientists and engineers had been preparing for this day. While the public thought humanity only had basic space technology, secret research facilities had developed weapons and ships that were beyond anything the aliens had ever seen. The Ghost Fleet used quantum stealth fields that made them completely invisible. Their weapons could manipulate gravity and dark matter. Their engines could bend space-time to move faster than anything in the galaxy. But the aliens knew none of this because every Ghost Fleet ship had been built in secret facilities hidden throughout the outer solar system. Back on the Colorado, Captain Tucker was putting on a show for the alien listeners. This is Captain Tucker to all ships. I know our weapons aren't as powerful as theirs, but we're going to make them pay for every meter of space. Charge all plasma cannons and arm missile tubes. The truth was that the Colorado's plasma cannons were actually just improved versions of weapons that were 50 years old. The missiles were chemical rockets that moved slowly and carried conventional explosives. Against the alien ships, they would be like throwing rocks at a tank. But the aliens didn't need to know that the Colorado was carrying something else in its cargo bay. Quantum sensors that were taking detailed scans of every hegemony ship. The information was being sent instantly to the Ghost Fleet through quantum communication channels that were impossible to detect. Captain Amy Walsh on the Nevada was also playing her part. Her ship was the newest in the visible fleet, but it was still 20 years behind the technology in the Ghost Fleet ships. Colorado, this is Nevada. I'm detecting massive power signatures from the alien vessels. Their shields appear to be at least 10 times stronger than anything we can generate. Copy that, Nevada. We'll have to rely on speed and tactics. On his private command channel, Ben could hear Admiral Morrison's real voice. Excellent work, Captain. The aliens are completely convinced that they're seeing our best ships. Ghost Fleet commanders report that enemy weapons and shields are much weaker than expected. When the time comes, we'll cut through them like paper. Ben smiled to himself. The aliens thought they were so superior, but they had made a critical mistake. They had assumed that the ships they could see were the only ships humanity had. They had never considered that a primitive species might be smart enough to hide their real military strength. War Commander Zelthak was growing impatient. Krex, how much longer until their surrender deadline? 14 more hours, Commander. I'm tired of waiting. Select 3 of their ships and destroy them. Not enough to defeat their fleet, just enough to show them that resistance is hopeless. Which ships should we target? Zelthak looked at the display showing the human formation. Those 3 smaller vessels on the left side of their formation. Make sure the others can see what happens to them. Battlemaster Krex selected targets and powered up the plasma cannons. Weapons ready, Commander. Fire. 3 brilliant blue beams shot across space toward the human ships. The beams moved at the speed of light and hit their targets in less than 4 seconds. The USS Portland, USS Atlanta, and USS Phoenix exploded in balls of fire that could be seen throughout the inner solar system. The remaining human ships immediately scattered, running in different directions as if they were panicking. Radio chatter filled the airwaves as captains shouted orders and damage reports. To the aliens, it looked like the human fleet was falling apart. But Admiral Morrison knew that Captains Robert Kim, Sandra White, and Tony Rodriguez had died, knowing their sacrifice was part of a larger plan. Their ships had been equipped with special recording devices that had transmitted detailed information about alien weapon systems right up until the moment of their destruction. Ghost Fleet. This is Shepard, Morrison said on the quantum communication channel. We now have complete tactical data on enemy weapons. Begin final approach to attack positions. In 12 hours, we show these aliens what humanity can really do. Throughout the solar system, 200 invisible ships began their silent approach toward the alien fleet. Captain Sophie Blake watched 3 of her fellow ships die in brilliant flashes of light. The USS Portland, USS Atlanta, and USS Phoenix were there one moment and gone the next, vaporized by alien weapons that were more powerful than anything she had ever imagined. Captain, incoming transmission from the alien flagship, said her communications officer on the USS Montana. Sophie took a deep breath and prepared to play her role. Admiral Morrison had chosen her for this mission because she was one of the best actors in the fleet. Today she needed to convince the aliens that humanity was desperate and afraid. Put it through, she ordered. War Commander Zelthak's voice filled the bridge of the Montana. Humans, you have seen what our weapons can do. 3 of your ships are now space dust. Surrender immediately or we will destroy 3 more. Sophie activated her transmitter and made her voice sound shaky and scared. This is Captain Blake of the Earth Defense Force. We need time to contact our government. Please don't kill any more of our people. You have 2 of your hours. After that, 3 more ships die. The transmission ended, leaving Sophie's bridge in silence. Her crew looked at her with expressions that weren't entirely acting. Even though they knew about the Ghost Fleet, watching 3 ships full of good people get destroyed was hard. Captain, said Lieutenant Gary Chen from the sensor station, the alien fleet is moving into a tighter formation. They're getting ready for another attack. Sophie nodded. Keep monitoring them, Gary. And remember, everything we say on the standard channels needs to sound like we're losing hope. She switched to the fleet communication frequency that the aliens could intercept. All remaining ships, this is Montana. We need to spread out more. If they can destroy 3 ships that easily, we need to make ourselves harder targets. Captain Ben Tucker responded from the Colorado. Agreed, Montana. All ships implement evasive pattern Delta. Try to stay unpredictable. The 27 surviving human ships began moving in random patterns, as if they were trying to avoid being targeted by the alien weapons. Some ships moved behind Mars's moons, others flew in wide circles. To anyone watching, it looked like a fleet that was falling apart from fear and confusion, but every movement was carefully planned. The human ships were actually positioning themselves to provide the best possible sensor data about the alien fleet. Hidden scanners in their hulls were recording every detail about hegemony shields, weapons and engine systems. On the Hegemony flagship, Battlemaster Krek studied the human movements with contempt. They're running around like frightened animals, Commander. No tactical coordination, no effective strategy. This is exactly what we expected from a primitive species. War Commander Zelthak agreed. Have our science teams learned anything useful from scanning their ships? Yes, Commander. Their technology is even more basic than we first thought. Their ships use chemical rockets for propulsion and metal projectiles for weapons. Their computers are simple electronic devices that process information slowly. They have no understanding of quantum mechanics, gravitational manipulation, or dark matter physics. Zelthak felt satisfied. Every species the Hegemony had conquered had followed the same pattern. First, they tried to look strong with their most advanced weapons. When that failed, they became desperate and started making mistakes. Finally, they surrendered when they realized how hopeless their situation was. How many more demonstrations will it take before they give up? Based on historical data, Commander, most species surrender after losing about half their military forces. The humans have already lost 3 ships. If we destroy 9 or 10 more, they should be ready to talk. What neither Zelthak nor Krex knew was that their own ships were being scanned by technology that was far beyond their understanding. Hidden throughout the solar system, Ghost Fleet sensors were analyzing every Hegemony vessel in detail. The information was being sent instantly to Admiral Morrison through quantum communication channels that were impossible to detect. In the Cheyenne Deep Command Center, Admiral Morrison reviewed the latest intelligence reports with Colonel Mary Patterson and Dr. Helen Ross, Earth's leading expert on alien technology. What have we learned about their defenses, Dr. Ross? Morrison asked. Helen looked at her data displays with excitement. Admiral, their technology is actually quite primitive compared to what we expected. Their shields use simple energy barriers that can be easily penetrated by our dark matter weapons. Their hull armor is strong but brittle. A few hits from our quantum torpedoes should punch right through it. What about their weapons? Plasma cannons that fire in straight lines at light speed. Very powerful but also very predictable. Our ships can avoid them easily using gravitational deflection fields. Mary Patterson added her own analysis. Admiral, all Ghost Fleet units report ready for combat. We have 200 ships in attack positions. Each Hegemony vessel will face an average of 17 of our ships. The tactical computer gives us a 97% chance of complete victory. Morrison nodded, but he looked serious. Remember, people, we're not just trying to win this battle. We're sending a message to every species in the galaxy. Earth is not helpless, and we won't tolerate bullies in our neighborhood. Back on the Montana, Sophie Blake was preparing for the next phase of the deception. She opened a channel to Luna Command using the old radio system that the aliens could monitor. Luna Command, this is Captain Blake. Our situation is desperate. We've lost 3 ships and the aliens are demanding surrender. I don't think we can hold out much longer with the forces we have. Admiral Morrison's voice came back, sounding tired and worried. Understood, Montana. I'm contacting the President to discuss surrender terms. Try to buy us more time, Sophie almost smiled. Admiral Morrison was such a good actor that even she almost believed he was really considering surrender. The aliens would definitely intercept that transmission and think they had already won. On the Hegemony flagship, Zelthak was indeed listening to every human communication. Perfect. Their military leader is already talking about surrender. Once their political leaders realize the situation is hopeless, this will be over. Should we destroy more ships to speed up the process? Asked Krex. Not yet. Let them think about their dead comrades for a while. Fear works better than anger for breaking enemy morale. Zelthak didn't know that Captain Sophie Blake was using the time to complete the final phase of humanity's preparation, while pretending to discuss surrender terms. She was actually transmitting targeting data to the Ghost Fleet. Every Hegemony ship had been scanned, analyzed, and marked for destruction. The alien fleet hung in space near Mars, confident and relaxed. Their crews believed they were dealing with a species that had already given up. Some of the younger Hegemony warriors were disappointed that the conquest had been so easy. But throughout the solar system, invisible ships were moving into final attack positions. On the UESN Nemesis, Captain Rick Davis prepared his fighter squadrons for launch. On the UESN Phantom Strike, Captain Helen Foster armed quantum torpedoes that could crack planets. On the flagship UESN Retribution, Admiral Pete Collins reviewed final attack plans with his senior officers. In 8 hours, War Commander Zelthak would demand humanity's final answer. He expected to receive a message of complete surrender from a broken species that had learned its place in the galaxy. Instead, he would discover that humans had been playing the longest, most dangerous game of poker in galactic history, and Earth was about to reveal that it had been holding all the winning cards from the very beginning. Sophie Blake looked out at the alien ships through the Montana's main viewer. "Enjoy your confidence while it lasts," she whispered. "In a few hours, you're going to learn that underestimating humanity is the last mistake you'll ever make." War Commander Zeltak tried to maintain his dignity even as his world fell apart around him. 200 human ships surrounded his fleet, each one more advanced than anything the hegemony had ever built. But he was still a military commander, and he would not surrender without trying to fight back. "All hegemony ships, this is War Commander Zeltak. Prepare for battle. Target the largest human vessels and fire all weapons." Battlemaster Krex looked at his commander with surprise. "Sir, our weapons may not be effective against their technology. Perhaps we should consider their surrender terms." "Never. The hegemony does not surrender to primitive species, no matter what tricks they have learned." "All ships, open fire!" 12 hegemony warships fired their plasma cannons at the same time. Bright blue beams shot toward the human fleet at the speed of light. The beams hit several Ghost Fleet ships directly, creating brilliant explosions of light and energy. For a moment, Zeltak felt hopeful. Maybe the human ships weren't as advanced as they appeared. Maybe their shields could be overwhelmed by concentrated fire. Then the light faded, and the human ships were completely undamaged. Captain Helen Foster's voice came from the UESN Phantom Strike with amusement in her tone. "Is that all you've got? Our gravitational shields didn't even register that attack. Ghost Fleet, you are cleared to return fire. Show them what real weapons look like." The response was immediate and devastating. The Phantom Strike fired a single dark matter beam at the hegemony ship Eternal Destroyer. The beam was deep purple and seemed to bend space around it as it traveled. When it hit the alien ship, it cut through the hull like it was made of paper. The Eternal Destroyer broke in half and exploded in a massive fireball. Captain Rick Davis launched his fighter squadrons from the Nemesis. But these weren't normal fighter craft. Each small ship could phase in and out of normal spacetime, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. They swarmed around the hegemony vessels, firing quantum missiles that exploded inside enemy ships rather than against their hulls. The hegemony ship Iron Conquest tried to target the human fighters, but their weapons couldn't lock onto ships that kept vanishing and reappearing. Meanwhile, the fighters destroyed the alien ship's weapons one by one with surgical precision. Admiral Pete Collins coordinated the attack from the flagship UESN Retribution. "All ships focus fire on military targets only. We want to disable their fleet, not commit genocide, but make sure they understand they're completely outmatched." The human ships moved through space with impossible grace and speed. Their engines seemed to ignore basic physics, allowing them to accelerate and change direction in ways that should have been impossible. The hegemony ships, which had seemed so fast and maneuverable before, now looked like they were moving through thick liquid. War Commander Zeltak watched 3 more of his ships explode in the first minute of combat. The human weapons were beyond his understanding. Some fired beams that seemed to eat through matter itself. Others launched projectiles that opened portals in space and struck from unexpected angles. A few human ships simply pointed at hegemony vessels and made them stop working, as if they could turn off alien technology with a thought. "Battlemaster Krex, damage report." Krex's voice was shaking as he read from his displays. "We've lost 6 ships already, Commander. The survivors are reporting massive system failures. Our weapons can't penetrate their defenses, but their weapons are cutting through our shields and armor like they don't exist. The hegemony ship Storm of Keth tried to ram one of the smaller human vessels, hoping to at least take one enemy ship down with it. But the human ship simply phased out of normal space-time, allowing the alien vessel to pass harmlessly through the space where it had been. As the Storm of Keth flew past, the human ship reappeared and fired a single shot that disabled the alien engines. Captain Julie Manning commanded a strike group of 6 ships that surrounded the hegemony vessel, Dark Victory. Instead of destroying it immediately, her ships demonstrated their superior technology by systematically shutting down every system on the alien ship, one by one. First the weapons went offline, then the engines, then life support, then artificial gravity. "This is Captain Manning to the crew of the Dark Victory. We are demonstrating that we can control your ship completely without harming your crew. We suggest you surrender now before we decide to show you what our weapons can do to living targets." The Dark Victory's captain immediately sent a surrender message. Throughout the battle, Admiral Morrison watched from Cheyenne Deep, command with Colonel Mary Patterson and Dr. Helen Ross. The tactical display showed the engagement as a completely one-sided victory for humanity. "How are our ships performing, Dr. Ross?" Morrison asked. Helen looked at her instruments with pride. "Better than we hoped, Admiral. The dark matter weapons are functioning perfectly. The quantum phase fighters are operating at 98% efficiency. The gravitational shields haven't been penetrated by a single enemy attack. Any casualties on our side?" "None, sir. The alien weapons can't even scratch our armor." But Morrison wasn't celebrating yet. "Remember, people, this isn't just about winning. We need to send a message that will be heard throughout the galaxy. Every species needs to know that Earth will not tolerate bullying." Battlemaster Krex tried one final desperate strategy. "Commander, we still have the planet killer missiles. If we can't defeat their fleet, we could threaten their homeworld directly." Zelthak considered the idea for exactly 2 seconds before 3 human ships materialized directly around his flagship, the UESN Death's Head, the UESN Final Warning, and the UESN No Mercy took positions so close to the Hegemony flagship that their hulls almost touched. Captain Sarah Kim's voice came from the Death's Head. "War Commander, we detected your weapon systems targeting Earth. That was a very bad idea. You now have 5 seconds to power down all weapons, or we will demonstrate why our ship is called Death's Head." Zelthak looked at his weapons displays and saw that the human ships had somehow taken control of his targeting systems. His own missiles were now pointed at his own ships instead of at Earth. "Power down all weapons immediately," he ordered. The battle was over in less than 8 minutes. 6 Hegemony ships had been completely destroyed. The remaining 6 were disabled and surrounded by human vessels that could have annihilated them at any moment. Admiral Collins opened a general communication channel to both the human and alien fleets. "This engagement is concluded. The Hegemony fleet has been defeated. War Commander Zelthak, you and your surviving crews are now prisoners of the United Earth Space Navy." Zelthak sat in his command chair, staring at displays that showed the complete destruction of his fleet. In 8 minutes, the humans had done what no other species had ever accomplished. They had not just defeated the Hegemony, they had made it look easy. "Admiral Collins," he said quietly, "how is this possible? Your species appeared to have only primitive technology. How did you develop weapons that make our most advanced systems look like children's toys?" Pete Collins' answer came back immediately. "Because we've been preparing for this fight for 15 years, and we've been studying your weaknesses for even longer. Every species you conquered taught us something about how to defeat you. Every world you destroyed showed us what we needed to protect. Every threat you made just gave us more motivation to build better weapons," Captain Amy Walsh added from the Nevada. "War Commander, you made the same mistake that every bully makes. You assumed that because someone appears weak, they actually are weak. You never considered that we might be hiding our strength until we needed it." As the last fires from the destroyed Hegemony ships faded, humanity's ghost fleet maintained perfect formation around the defeated aliens. For the first time in the history of the galaxy, the Hegemony of Keth had been completely and utterly defeated by a species they had thought was primitive and helpless. The battle was over, but the real war was just beginning. Throughout the galaxy, 17 enslaved species would soon learn that Earth had not just defended itself. Humanity had declared that the age of Hegemony tyranny was ending, and a new era of galactic freedom was about to begin. War Commander Zelthak stood on the bridge of his flagship, feeling very pleased with himself. In 30 minutes, the humans would have to give their final answer. He was confident they would surrender completely. Every species always did when they realized how hopeless their situation was. "Commander, we're receiving another transmission from the human fleet," reported his communications officer. "Put it through. Let's hear them beg for mercy." Captain Sophie Blake's voice came through the speakers, sounding defeated and tired. "War Commander Zelthak, this is Captain Blake of the Earth Defense Force. We need to discuss surrender terms. Our government is prepared to negotiate." Zelthak made a satisfied sound. "Finally, they're showing wisdom. Very well, human. You have 5 minutes to tell me your terms. We need more time to contact all our scattered ships and bases. Some of our forces are spread throughout the outer system. It will take at least an hour to reach them all. You have 30 minutes. After that, we begin destroying your remaining ships one by one until you surrender unconditionally." The transmission ended. Zelthak turned to Battlemaster Krex with triumph in his voice. Another species learns to bow before the hegemony, begin preparations to take control of their orbital facilities. But 30 light minutes away in the Cheyenne Deep Command Center, Admiral Morrison was smiling. Sophie Blake had just given him the signal he had been waiting for. It was time to drop the mask and show these aliens what humanity could really do. "Colonel Patterson, send the activation code to all Ghost Fleet units. Operation Wolfpack is now active." Mary Patterson's fingers moved quickly over her quantum communication console. Throughout the solar system, 200 hidden ships received the message they had been waiting 15 years to hear. Decloak the wolves. In space around Mars, the first sign that something was wrong appeared as tiny distortions in starlight. The distortions grew larger and more obvious as quantum stealth fields began to shut down. Space itself seemed to shimmer and bend as invisible ships started to become visible. On the Hegemony flagship, a young sensor technician noticed the strange readings first. "Battlemaster Krex, I'm seeing unusual energy signatures near the human fleet. The readings don't match any known technology." Krex looked at his displays with mild curiosity. Probably some kind of primitive sensor malfunction. These humans can barely maintain their basic systems. But the readings kept getting stronger. More technicians started reporting similar anomalies. The energy signatures were appearing all around the Hegemony fleet, not just near the human ships. Then the first Ghost Fleet ship fully materialized. The UESN Phantom Strike appeared directly above the Hegemony flagship, less than 10,000 kilometers away. The ship was completely black and seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. It was longer than any Hegemony vessel but much thinner, like a sword made of dark metal and impossible technology. "What is that?" Zeltak demanded, staring at the main display in shock. Before anyone could answer, more ships began appearing. The UESN Nemesis materialized with fighter craft streaming from its launch bays. The UESN Dark Thunder appeared beside it, weapon ports glowing with energy that hurt to look at directly. The UESN Silent Death took position behind the alien fleet, cutting off their escape route. Within 60 seconds, 200 Ghost Fleet ships had appeared from nowhere, surrounding the 12 Hegemony vessels completely. Each human ship looked like it had been built by a civilization that was centuries ahead of anything the aliens had ever seen. Captain Rick Davis opened a communication channel from the Nemesis. "Alien vessels, this is the United Earth Space Navy. You are completely surrounded and outgunned. Power down your weapons and prepare to surrender." War Commander Zeltak stared at the display showing dozens of ships that hadn't existed a minute ago. His mind couldn't process what he was seeing. "This is impossible. Our sensors showed only 30 primitive vessels. Where did these ships come from?" Battlemaster Krex was frantically working at his sensor station, trying to understand what had happened. "Commander, these new ships don't appear in any of our databases. Their energy signatures are completely unknown. Their technology appears to be far more advanced than anything we've encountered." "How advanced?" Krex's voice shook as he read his instruments. "Commander, one of their smaller ships is generating more power than our entire flagship. Their weapons are using forms of energy we don't recognize. Their engines seem to be bending space-time itself." Admiral Pete Collins's voice came from the human flagship, the UESN Retribution, which had appeared directly in front of the alien fleet. "War Commander Zelthak, this is Admiral Collins of the Earth Defense Command. We need to have a conversation." Zelthak found his voice, though it sounded much less confident than before. "How is this possible? Our intelligence reports showed that your species has only basic space technology." "That's exactly what we wanted you to think. For 15 years, we've been watching your empire expand across the galaxy. We've been studying your tactics, your weapons, and your weaknesses. We knew you would come to Earth eventually, so we prepared a surprise for you." On the bridge of the Montana, Captain Sophie Blake dropped her act of being scared and defeated. She switched to the quantum communication system that connected her to the real Earth fleet. "Ghost Fleet, this is Montana. All targeting data has been transmitted. Every alien ship is marked for destruction." Captain Helen Foster responded from the Phantom Strike. "Montana, this is Ghost Fleet Actual. We have firing solutions on all 12 enemy vessels. We can destroy their entire fleet in under 2 minutes." But Admiral Morrison had other plans. His voice came through on the command frequency. All Ghost Fleet units hold your fire. We're not here to start a war. We're here to end one. Back on the Hegemony flagship, War Commander Zelthak was trying to understand how badly he had miscalculated. Admiral Collins, if you had this fleet all along, why didn't you reveal it immediately? Why let us destroy your ships and kill your people? Pete Collins' answer came back immediately. Because we needed to learn everything about your weapons and tactics. The 3 ships you destroyed were crewed by volunteers who knew they were sacrificing themselves to gather intelligence. Their sacrifice has given us complete tactical superiority over your entire fleet. Zelthak looked around his bridge at crew members who were no longer confident and relaxed. Everyone was staring at the displays showing human ships that looked like they came from a nightmare. Weapons that glowed with impossible energies. Engines that warped space around them. Technology that made the Hegemony look like children playing with simple tools. What do you want from us? Zelthak asked, knowing that his position had completely reversed in a matter of minutes. We want you to understand something very important. Admiral Morrison's voice came through clearly. Humanity is not a primitive species that you can conquer and control. We are not impressed by your battleships or your threats. We have been preparing for this meeting for a very long time, and we are ready to defend not just ourselves, but every species you have conquered. Dr. Helen Ross added her own message from the Cheyenne Deep Command Center. War Commander, we have been monitoring your Empire's communications for years. We know about every species you have enslaved. We know about every world you have destroyed. We know about the 17 civilizations that tried to resist you and failed. How could you know all of that? Because we've been there, Admiral Morrison answered. We've had ships in your territory for over a decade, completely invisible to your sensors. We've been making contact with the species you conquered, helping them prepare for their liberation. Zelthak felt something he had never experienced in his long military career. Complete and total defeat. Not just tactical defeat, but the realization that his enemy had been planning and preparing while he had been celebrating easy victories. Captain Amy Walsh's voice came from the Nevada, which was now surrounded by Ghost Fleet escorts. Alien Commander, your empire ends today. The question is whether it ends with your surrender or with your destruction. The choice is yours. War Commander Zelthak looked at his tactical display one more time. 12 Hegemony ships surrounded by 200 human vessels that were clearly superior in every way. His weapons couldn't penetrate their shields. His engines couldn't outrun their pursuit. His empire was finished and he knew it. Admiral Morrison, he said finally, I request permission to speak with you directly. It appears that the Hegemony has much to learn about humanity.